From the personal journal of Dr. Nathan Rourke, biologist. I don't remember the sound of Caitlin's scream so much as I remember the way it cut off. 1 second she was yelling something, couldn't tell what through the fog, and the next it was silence. Just gone, like the sound itself got swallowed. There wasn't even an echo. I was running before my brain caught up, sloshing through knee-deep marsh water with a flare gun in one hand and a half-zipped field bag in the other. My boots made a sound like wet suction cups peeling off glass, and every step tried to drag me down. Still, I ran, because I thought I could get to her. I thought if I was fast enough, smart enough, I could do what all those true crime documentaries say not to do. Be the hero. Caitlin had gone to collect water samples just 5 feet away. Just 5. I could still hear her voice in my head. Be right back, try not to fall in love with the mud without me. And just like that, she vanished. We found the spot by the reeds. No footprints, just a perfect dry circle of flattened marsh grass. And in the center, like a candle guttering out, a faint red glow, hovering at eye level. I moved my hand toward it, and it blinked out. That was the first day in the marsh, but I should probably rewind. 3 days earlier, we arrived on fan boats, sliding over the watery terrain of a place no one had officially mapped in decades. A new grant meant we'd be studying biodiversity in the Pacific Northwest's uncharted wetlands, a place the state's records called Merrill Marsh, which is either ominous or just poorly named, hard to say. There were 6 of us: Dr. Sarah Winslow, project lead and queen of passive-aggressive spreadsheets; Miguel Alvarez, our resident herpetologist and alligator whisperer; Caitlin Myers, fresh out of grad school, too many patches on her backpack; Tasha Kim, tech wizard and satellite phone sorceress; Raj Patel, the intern whose optimism hadn't yet been replaced by caffeine and despair; and me, Dr. Nathan Rourke, biologist and reluctant trip chronicler. We pitched our tents on a slightly elevated patch of land, surrounded by reeds taller than I am, and set up base camp. That first night, the fog rolled in so thick you could have spread it on toast. It never left after that. GPS is being a diva, Tasha muttered, frowning at her tablet. Keep saying we're in the middle of the ocean. That explains the crabs in my sleeping bag, I said. Those were Cheetos, Raj added. Crabs disguised as Cheetos, then. The jokes kept the mood light for a while. It wasn't until the next morning that we noticed the weirdness. Aside from the fog not lifting, ever, there was a strange quality to the air. Sound didn't travel right. You could hear someone right next to you, but 5 feet away, and it was like shouting into a pillow. Caitlin disappeared later that afternoon. She took a sample kit, told us to wait, and waded into the reeds. I saw her ponytail vanish into the mist, still swinging. Then came the scream, sharp, human, hers. By the time we got there, she was gone. The water was undisturbed, not even ripples, which was impossible. And that dry circle, grass crushed into a spiral pattern like it had been braided down, stayed with me, a shape too deliberate to be natural. The red glow hovering in the middle didn't cast any light, didn't reflect on anything. It was just present, watching. Sarah wanted to call it in. Tasha tried the sat phone. No signal, not even static, just a dead click. That night we sat around our unlit campfire. No one felt right about lighting it. The fog seemed to close in tighter whenever flame was involved. So we just sat there like mourners at a wake, eating cold protein bars and listening. Then Miguel said, "The reeds closed back up." We looked at him. "When I cut through them earlier to track Caitlin's trail," he said, "the path I made, it's gone, like the plants knitted themselves back together." "No wind, no water movement?" Sarah asked, deadpan. "None, and I marked trees along the way. They're missing the cuts." "Maybe you were in the wrong place?" Miguel shook his head. "I never forget a tree I've defaced." Raj tried to laugh, and it died halfway out of his mouth. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my tent staring at the mesh ceiling, the fog glowing like an overcast moon. Everything felt too quiet, like the swamp was holding its breath. And then I heard it. A splash. Just one. Then silence. I sat up, listened. Another splash, closer this time, like someone stepping in shallow water with careful, slow steps. I leaned toward the mesh and whispered, "Caitlin?" Nothing. The splash came again. Then the reeds rustled. I crawled out of my tent, careful not to make a sound. I didn't want to wake the others, or whatever was making the noise. I walked slowly, holding my breath toward the edge of camp. That's when I saw it. A faint red light, bobbing just above the water, weaving between the reeds. Not moving like a flashlight or a drone. It drifted like it was alive, like it was curious. Then it stopped, dead still, like it was waiting. It tilted slightly, like someone tilting their head. I raised my flare gun and flicked off the safety. "Who's there?" I asked. The red light pulsed, then it blinked out. The next morning I tried to tell the others what I saw. Sarah told me I'd had a nightmare. Miguel offered me coffee made from what might have been pond water. Raj asked if I'd seen his sketchbook. Only Tasha looked concerned. "You said it tilted its head?" she asked. "Yeah, why?" She didn't answer, just tapped her satellite phone like it owed her money and muttered, "This place eats signal, eats sound, might as well eat us next." I smiled, trying to brush it off. "If it tries, I'll give it indigestion." Nobody laughed. I never thought I'd be nostalgic for something as annoying as mosquitoes. But that morning, the one after Caitlin vanished, I noticed the bugs were gone. No buzzing, no bites, no dragonflies, nothing flying, crawling, or even wriggling. Just still water, whispering reeds, and the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. "Is it just me?" Raj said, staring blankly at his protein bar. "Or is it weird that nothing's biting us?" Miguel, spooning algae into a sample vial, nodded. "Swamps are supposed to buzz. This feels sterilized," I added. "Weird way to say we're in a haunted marsh, but sure." Tasha cracked her knuckles. "I'm officially elevating this place from off-grid to grid-adjacent purgatory." She held up her phone like it was cursed. "Still dead. And I charged this thing with a solar pack that survived 4 music festivals and 1 lightning strike." Sarah gave her a look. "We'll stay on mission, secure the perimeter, re-establish comms, and find Caitlin." I appreciated her confidence, even if she sounded like she was reading it off a clipboard. After breakfast, we spread out, 10 feet apart, whistles ready. We agreed not to enter the reeds alone. That plan lasted about 20 minutes. Miguel spotted what he said was a nest and decided he had to see it up close. "Something's nesting low in there. Could be swamp herons or something undiscovered." "What part of 'don't go alone' didn't you get?" I called after him. "I'll be 5 minutes," he called back. "You think I'm going to get eaten by fog?" "Honestly, yes." 10 minutes later, Miguel returned, pale and shaking his head. "I cut a path through the reeds, marked them with bright orange twine." "And?" Sarah asked. "When I turned around, twine was gone. The path was gone. It was like it just grew back over me." "You mean you got turned around?" Sarah said. "No," he snapped. "I don't get lost. I tagged the trees. I marked them." He held up his hands. His machete was still damp with sap, bits of reed stuck to the blade. His knuckles were scraped raw. It was like they healed. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the fog. Later that day, I took Raj with me to retrieve a wildlife camera we'd mounted at the edge of camp the first night. When we checked the SD card, we found 2 hours of normal footage, mist rolling, reeds waving. Then at 3:17 a.m., the fog thickened, the camera flickered, and something stepped into frame. At first it looked like a human silhouette, tall, thin, slightly hunched, but its face, no features, just a faint red glow where the eyes should be, not glowing from the eyes, just hovering in front of where they should be. It stood still, didn't sway, didn't blink, just tilted its head, slightly, precisely, like it was listening, and then it stared. For 3 straight hours, unmoving, unblinking, just red lights locked on the camera lens. "I've never wanted to punch pixels before," Raj whispered. "Congratulations," I said. "You've just met the Marsh Folks Welcoming Committee." That night, we argued. Sarah wanted to stay put and wait for rescue. Miguel wanted to map the marsh and track any animal behavior he could. Tasha wanted to burn the entire wetland down and take up accounting. Raj said, "I don't care what we do as long as we don't split up." So naturally, we split into pairs and did patrol sweeps. Tasha and I took the southern edge of camp. The fog was thicker there, almost solid. You could hear your own heartbeat echo off it. We passed the same log twice before we realized we weren't walking in circles. The fog was. It moved with us, flowed around us. It wasn't just atmosphere, it was aware. Okay, I said, tapping her shoulder. Joke's over. You've definitely slipped me one of your edibles from that weekend in Big Sur. Shut up and keep walking, she hissed. Then we heard it. A low, wet growl, not a big cat, not a gator, something throatier, like it had too many vocal cords and not enough mouth. We froze. Tasha grabbed my arm. We turned to run and walked straight into Sarah. Easy, she hissed. What are you doing out here? I said. She held up the sat phone. Still dead, but I found something weird. She led us to a cluster of trees where the bark was covered in strange indentations. Symbols like scratch marks arranged in spirals. Each one had a red stain in the center, dried and cracked. Blood? Tasha asked. Sarah didn't answer. We got back to camp around midnight. The fog had thickened to the point where our lanterns barely punched through it. Everything felt muffled. That's when Raj found the tape recorder. It was our recorder, from our supply bin. It had been set on a stump. It clicked on by itself and played Caitlin's voice. Guys, I think I'm lost. Hello? Can anyone hear me? Then a scream, short, sharp, the same one I'd heard 2 nights ago. Where did you find this? I asked. Raj just stared at it wide-eyed. I didn't, he said. It was already playing when I woke up. Sarah turned the recorder off and tucked it into her jacket. No one said anything for a long time. Then Miguel looked up. There's no mud on it. What? I asked. He pointed. That recorder's been sitting on a stump in a wet marsh all night. No water damage, no dirt, no mold. Looks like it just came out of the box. He was right. We all looked at each other. Then Raj said what we were all thinking. It was bait. That night I dreamed I was standing in the reeds. The fog wasn't white, it was red, thick, breathing like it had lungs. Something stood across from me in the reeds, with a shape like a man, but arms too long and fingers too still. Its head tilted. Its voice sounded like my own. You'll stay, it said. You'll see. I woke up sweating, heart hammering. Outside my tent, the fog glowed with faint red points of light. They hovered, unmoving, just beyond the line of sight, waiting. You ever have one of those days where you realize you're the least qualified person in the group, and you're also somehow the only one taking notes? Yeah, that was me the next morning. Team morale was circling the drain like a frog in a blender. Sarah was spiraling into keep calm and organize the clipboard mode. Miguel kept muttering equations no one asked for. Raj hadn't spoken since the Caitlin tape incident, and Tasha was seriously eyeballing the flare gun like it was Plan B. So I did what any emotionally responsible adult would do. I volunteered to go investigate the creepy building in the middle of the fog, alone. Let me back up. We found the shack by accident, a rotten wooden structure half swallowed by reeds, standing on stilts about a foot above marsh water. I caught sight of it while collecting sample jars that weren't really collecting anything. The place looked like something out of an abandoned Civil War diorama. Tilted slightly, paint peeled down to gray flesh, shutters hanging limp like broken wings. Steps groaned under my boots as I climbed. Inside was worse. It smelled like mildew and old fear. There were 2 things of note, a rusted cot with half a sleeping bag, and a metal locker with its door hanging open like a yawn. I kicked aside a pile of rotting canvas and found it. A journal. Hard leather cover, pages swollen with damp and smudged ink. But someone had written in it. A lot. Sloppy handwriting, no dates, just raw, frantic scrawl. I flipped to the first legible page. They come at night, not always to take, sometimes just to look. But the longer they look, the more you feel something leaving, like memory, like skin. Okay, deep breath, not a great start. Next page. The fog has rules. You don't move too fast. Don't shine direct light. And never ever whistle. Whistling draws them. Sound draws them. They see with it. They feel your shape through it. Another. The marsh folk weren't always like this. I saw it in their eyes once, human or close. They traded themselves for something else, something that survives in this swamp where nothing else should. The last legible entry chilled me worse than the fog ever could. I tried to leave yesterday, thought I found a dry patch, kept walking. Every step sank deeper, saw my own face looking up from the water, smiling. I closed the journal, hands trembling. I brought it back to camp like it was radioactive. Tasha grabbed it first. This reads like someone mainlined a conspiracy blog and tried journaling during a breakdown. It matches, I said. The red lights, the mimicry, the faces. Sarah snatched it next, flipping through the entries. These could be hallucinations, starvation, dehydration. You read the part where he saw his own face in the marsh, Miguel cut in? Could be metaphorical. Could be a warning, I said. Raj, quiet until now, murmured, "What if it's a map?" We looked at him. I mean, he survived. Whoever wrote this, he knew the patterns. Maybe it's not just paranoia, it's documentation. No one argued, which meant we were out of better ideas. That night, we didn't argue about fire. We didn't try to make jokes. We just sat in a circle reading the journal out loud under our headlamps like it was scripture. It had no answers, just observations, bits of repetition. Don't speak. Don't look too long. Red eyes mean curiosity. Blue ones mean hunger. Blue? We hadn't seen blue. Yet. Around 2 a.m. the fog changed. That's the only way I can put it. It didn't roll or shift like it had before. It convulsed, like a lung taking in breath. Thick and sudden. Our lanterns dimmed without the fuel lowering. Then came the sound. Not a scream, not an animal. It was a groan, wet, massive, like something waking up beneath mud. And then the red lights came, 6 of them slowly bobbing just outside our circle. Too high for an animal, not swaying like torches. They hovered like they were on invisible strings. Sarah hissed, "Don't move." Miguel whispered, "You think it's Caitlin?" Tasha reached slowly for the flare gun. "No," Raj whispered. "They're watching." We held still, hearts hammering. I could feel mine in my toes. One light tilted, another responded. Then without warning, the lights all blinked out, one by one. Silence. The next morning, Sarah packed the journal into a dry bag and said we needed to find higher ground. "I want a clearer signal, maybe even line of sight with the coast." Miguel pointed out we didn't have a coast, not a visible one. She looked him dead in the eye. "Then we'll make one." I didn't say it, but it felt like we were trying to swim up a waterfall. The marsh didn't want us to leave. It wanted us watched. We left a camera rolling at the edge of camp that morning. Later that night, we checked the footage. There it was again. Same shape, same red glow, standing still, staring at the camera. Only this time something changed. It moved. One step, then another, still slow, still silent, but undeniably walking toward the camera. It stopped 3 feet from the lens, tilted its head, then leaned in. The screen filled with red glow, and then it reached up with a hand that looked too human and turned the camera off. No one said anything after that. We just listened to the silence in the reeds and waited. You know that feeling when someone calls your name and you know it's them, but something about the tone makes your spine stiffen like a frozen pipe. That's what it was like when Caitlin's voice screamed out from the fog. Again. Only this time we knew better. It started just before sunset. We'd spent most of the day climbing a slow rise in the marsh, what we hoped was actual elevation, and not some cruel hill-shaped illusion from the fog. Tasha called it Mount Regret. We hadn't talked much while hiking. Everyone was conserving energy. Sarah was tracking our direction on a compass that spun like a slot machine. Miguel kept glancing over his shoulder like he expected the reeds to whisper secrets. Raj was quiet, too quiet. We stopped when Sarah held up a hand. "Listen." We froze. There it was, just barely audible through the thick mist, sloshing, someone running, then, "Help, please." A scream tore through the stillness, panicked and cracking. "Guys, it's me. I'm here." My blood ran cold. It was Caitlin, the same voice, same breathless panic. She was running through the marsh, coming from the east, getting closer. Miguel bolted. "Wait," Sarah shouted, but he was already crashing through the reeds. Raj took off after him. Tasha hesitated for a beat, then followed. I didn't have a choice. I ran too. The sound of splashing, breaking branches, and Caitlin's voice echoed around us. like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once, always just ahead. We pushed through cattails and slime-slick water until we stumbled into a clearing we'd never seen before. Not a campsite, no trees, just mud. And in the middle, a tape recorder. For hours, it lay there, sitting neatly on top of a flat, dry stone, still playing. "It's me, I'm here," Caitlin's voice again. "Guys, guys." Then the scream. Then it looped, again and again. I bent down, hands shaking, and clicked it off. The silence that followed was worse than the scream. Thick, expectant. Sarah arrived a moment later, out of breath and red-faced. "What is that?" she rasped. "Our gear," I said. Again. Tasha looked pale. "This wasn't with us last night. I packed all the audio equipment myself." Raj was staring into the fog, wide-eyed. "They're using our voices, our stuff. They know what we recognize." Sarah stood silent, teeth clenched. Then Miguel said softly, "It's not just mimicry, it's bait." He was right. The scream had been familiar, too familiar, the timing, the volume, even the background water sounds. It was the same scream we'd heard the night Caitlin vanished. Down to the second. It was a recording. We returned to camp in silence. The tape recorder went into a sealed bag. Sarah sat down and began flipping through the journal again. She didn't speak for over an hour. Eventually she muttered, "He wrote something about the mimicry." I looked up. "The ranger?" She nodded, tapping the page. "Here, they can sound like who you lost, like what you missed, but their voices are too perfect. No stumbles, no breath. And they always say the same thing," Raj added. "Same loop." I tried to make a joke. "So basically they're Spotify premium ghosts." No one laughed. Later that night I heard rustling again. I peeked through my tent flap. Another red light, same hovering glow, this one closer than before, just on the edge of camp. I stared at it. It didn't blink, didn't tilt. It just hovered. I whispered to myself, "Come on, blink once if you're a will-o'-the-wisp, twice if you're a cryptid." It blinked 3 times and vanished. Around 3 a.m., we were all startled awake by another sound. A rhythmic knock, knock, knock from the direction of the shack. Tasha and I exchanged looks. "I'll bite," I said. "That sounded like knocking, right?" She didn't smile. "We're in a marsh, Nate. Nothing should knock. Everything's wet." Miguel stood up slowly, holding the journal. "I don't think it's about the sound. I think it's about how we react." Sarah looked at him sharply. "Explain." He flipped to a page and read aloud. "When you hear the calls, don't follow. When you hear the knock, don't answer. The fog learns from your habits. It teaches itself new ways to pull." Raj muttered, "It's testing us." No one slept the rest of that night. When dawn broke, if you can call gray-on-gray dawn, we found something near the edge of camp, another dry patch of flattened reeds, spiral pattern again, and in the middle, a boot, Caitlin's, perfectly clean. No mud, no water damage, just sitting there. The laces were tied in a bow. We gathered around it, stunned. Miguel broke the silence. "She wore these the day she disappeared." "I saw her wearing them," I confirmed. Tasha turned it over with a stick. There was something inside. She fished it out. A torn scrap of our topographical map, the one we'd marked with our route. Only now the markings were different. They traced a circle, a perfect, unbroken loop, right back to where we stood. Sarah folded the map slowly. "We're not going in circles," she said. "The marsh is." That was the moment it hit me, hard and cold. We weren't stuck in a place. We were stuck in something. If you've never watched a grown woman threaten a satellite phone with a multi-tool while growling, "I dared you to die out here," you haven't met Tasha Kim. She had the sat phone cracked open like a lobster at a summer boil, components scattered across the camp's folding table, every wire poked and prodded. She'd even repurposed parts from one of the environmental sensors. Poor thing probably never expected to have its guts used for comms triage. "Status report?" I asked cautiously. Tasha didn't look up. "It's not dead, it's doing something else." "Doing what?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out earbuds. "Put these on." I hesitated. Am I going to regret this? Absolutely. The moment I plugged in, I heard it. Click, 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 click. Random at first, then almost musical, like bones knocking together in a rhythm, fast, slowing, fast again. No signal, no static, she said, just that, over and over every time we power it up. Is it broadcasting? Tasha blinked. I thought that too, so I checked. She turned the device screen toward me. The coordinates didn't make sense. Latitude and longitude numbers that shifted constantly, as if something were moving, or more accurately, as if we were. That's not us, she said quietly. That's something else, and it's trying to reach us. Meanwhile, Miguel had been reviewing the wildlife camera footage again. He'd stayed up half the night comparing it frame by frame against our existing logs. The difference was subtle, but horrifying. The thing's getting closer, he said. What thing? He pointed to the glowing figure in the last frame. In the first video, it was 30 feet back. Second night, 20 feet. This one, 10 feet. You can see condensation forming on the lens from its breath, I guess? And it's still not blinking, I said. He nodded. Not once. Creepy eye contact and zero personal space. It's basically a bad Tinder date. Raj laughed. For the first time in days, it sounded rusty, but none of us felt better. Sarah took the journal again and flipped to a page I hadn't seen before. They're not hunting us, they're studying us, the mimicry, the lights, the sounds. It's all part of learning. The marsh folk copy what they fear, and they fear the ones who remember. She read it aloud, slowly, then said, If they copy what they fear, what happens when they finish learning? That afternoon we moved camp. Sarah insisted we get to higher ground, or at least different ground. We packed quickly, trying to stay within sight of each other. We'd walked maybe a mile before the fog thickened again, this time pulsing like it was breathing in and out, like something just beneath the surface was drawing slow, deliberate air. Tasha reached for my arm. Do you hear that? I nodded. Yeah, it's rhythmic. No, not the fog, the clicking. We stopped, and we all heard it. Click, click, click. The exact same rhythm as the sat phone, but this time in the air, coming from all around us. Then, like a conductor snapping their baton, all the clicking stopped. A single red light flared in the distance, and then a voice. It said, Don't look away. Miguel screamed. I turned and saw him drop to his knees in the reeds, clutching his head. It's in my ears. It's in my head. Raj and I ran to him. He was bleeding from his nose. Tasha checked his pupils. They were dilated, wide and dark as if he'd just seen the sun explode. We carried him back to camp. He didn't stop shaking for hours. When he finally calmed, he whispered, The voice, it wasn't Caitlin's. It wasn't anyone's. It was like hearing every wrong answer on a test I never took. Then he said something I'll never forget. They're practicing speech, like babies, mimicking what they think people sound like. Why tell us not to look away, I asked. Miguel didn't answer, but Tasha did. Because maybe they don't want us to see what happens when we blink. That night we turned on all the lanterns, created a ring of light around camp, bright enough to wash out most of the fog. It was a small comfort, like drawing a chalk circle on the floor and daring the ghosts to step over it. We placed the sat phone in the center. Tasha built a directional microphone array from 2 scavenged speakers and pointed it toward the reeds. And we waited. It was around midnight when the microphone hissed and crackled, and then whistling, soft, tuneless, moving from left to right as if pacing the edge of our circle. I froze. Raj's eyes widened. He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a torn, crumpled piece of paper from the journal. I hadn't noticed him taking it earlier. He held it up. When you hear whistling, close your eyes, don't speak, don't run. I shut my eyes. The whistling got louder, right behind me. I clenched my jaw. My whole body itched with the urge to turn around, to see. Something brushed my hair. I nearly lost it, nearly screamed. But I didn't move. The whistling passed, grew distant, then faded. Only after the fog pulsed again, one deep inhale, one slow exhale, did I open my eyes. Tasha was shaking. Raj was on the ground, hugging his knees. Miguel had curled into his sleeping bag, face turned to the reeds. Sarah whispered, One of them got close, right behind me. It breathed on my neck. I tried to make a joke. Next time it does that, ask it to buy you dinner first. No one laughed. Again. But I said it anyway, because when you're surrounded by fog, chased by mimicry and red-eyed mannequins pretending to be your friends, a dumb joke might be the only thing that still belongs to you. We didn't talk about the whistling the next morning, not really, not directly. We packed up camp in silence, every movement deliberate. Even the zippers sounded nervous. Sarah double-checked our bags while Miguel watched the perimeter with red-ringed eyes and a blank stare. Tasha refused to look at the fog. Raj just kept clutching that crumpled rule he'd torn from the journal like it was a Bible, and he was halfway through Revelation. Me? I wrote down everything I could remember, every detail, because if there's one thing no one tells you about horror, it's how fast it slips from your brain once daylight shows up. But that morning even the light felt fake, thin and gray like a weak bulb behind frosted glass. We walked, no real direction, just forward, always forward. Raj muttered, "If we move fast enough, maybe we outrun it." "You think it's chasing us?" I asked. He looked at me like a kid who'd just found out Santa eats the reindeer. "I think it isn't letting us go." 2 hours later, Miguel stopped walking. We all turned. He was staring at a tree. It had bark slashed in long, jagged streaks, deep enough to gouge into the meat beneath. At first, I thought it was a lightning strike. Then I saw the lines formed a spiral. "Again with the spirals," Tasha muttered. But this one was different. This one had something nailed into it, a scrap of faded canvas. And on it, written in what looked like charcoal, were the words, "When you hear whistling, close your eyes, don't speak, don't run." Raj stared at it. Same rule. Miguel touched the tree bark, frowning. "These gashes are fresh." Sarah scanned the surrounding reeds. "Then someone or something is still marking this place." I said what we were all thinking. Or it wants us to keep playing by the rules. That night we camped in a tight circle. No one ventured more than 5 feet from the fire, which Tasha relit after muttering, "I don't care if the fog hates fire, let it hate us both." She rigged a proximity alert with motion sensors scavenged from the wildlife cams. I wasn't convinced it would catch a misty mimic, but at least it gave her something to do with her hands. I volunteered for first watch. I told them it was because I wasn't tired, but really I just didn't want to close my eyes again, not after what I felt brushing against me the night before. 2 hours in, the fog started breathing again. That's the only way I can describe it. A pulse, a swelling and shrinking of the air itself, as if we were camping inside a lung. Then came the whistling. Same tune as before, aimless, wandering, but this time closer, right on the edge of the clearing. Tasha, half asleep beside me, shot up and grabbed my sleeve. "Is it back?" I nodded slowly. She reached for her flashlight. "Don't," I whispered. "Just remember the rule." Sarah stirred, eyes wide. Raj sat bolt upright, clutching the note again, and then we heard it. Footsteps, slow, squishing, getting closer. Sarah whispered, "What if it's Caitlin?" I grabbed her wrist. "Don't speak." The whistling grew louder, right behind us now, practically in our ears. And then, silence. I shut my eyes tight. Something was inches away. I could feel its heat or its cold. Honestly, I couldn't tell which. It was the absence of warmth, the absence of right. And then it brushed my cheek. Not a tap, not a stroke, just a subtle graze, like the back of a hand dragging across skin, measuring. I held my breath. In the darkness of my shut eyes, I could see it. A form, not quite human, not quite anything, just an outline in static, and then it moved on. The footsteps sloshed away, the whistling faded, and the fog sighed. When I opened my eyes, the others were still frozen. Raj looked like he might cry. Miguel stared at the fire like it had betrayed him. Sarah broke first. Did everyone close their eyes?" Everyone nodded. She exhaled. "Okay, that's something, that's something." Tasha looked at me. "What did it feel like?" I tried to answer, like being measured. Measured for what? I shook my head. Suitability, willingness, weakness? "I think," Raj said quietly, "it was seeing who followed the rules." The next morning we found another mark on a tree just 50 feet from camp. Another spiral, another note. Only this one said, "The ones who listen survive. The ones who remember stay." Sarah folded the paper and pocketed it. Why does it sound like it's deciding something? Miguel sat on a log, face pale. Maybe it's not trying to scare us. Maybe it's trying to recruit us, Raj added, or test us. Tasha said nothing, just stared into the fog. Then she whispered, I think we're being sorted. That night, Miguel didn't come back from filtering water. He'd gone 10 feet from camp. 10. Sarah found his bucket resting upright, perfectly balanced. Next to it, his boots, empty, facing the woods. There were no tracks in the mud, no splashes, only another perfect spiral of dry reeds where he'd been standing, and a faint red glow fading between the trees. I stared at the spot for a long time, not crying, not panicking, just cataloging it. His disappearance wasn't violent. It wasn't messy. It was precise, like a measurement, like an item being moved from one shelf to another. And for the first time, I wasn't just afraid. I was angry. We left Miguel's boots where we found them. It didn't feel right to move them. Didn't feel safe either. They just sat there at the edge of the reeds, facing out like he was still in them, watching something we couldn't see. No one spoke for a while. Then Tasha muttered, They took his body but left his clothes. Who are these things? Foggy serial killers with a laundry fetish? Even she didn't laugh. We stayed put for a day, partly because Sarah insisted we needed rest and partly because no one could stomach walking past those boots again. I tried distracting myself with notes, data, old entries. But every line I read from the journal just fed the unease gnawing at my ribs. Raj had gone from quietly anxious to something else entirely. He sat alone most of the day, drawing spirals in his notebook, muttering phrases like, "They only come when it's still," and "Fog doesn't fall, it rises." He started refusing food, said the fog had tasted him and didn't like him. I offered him a granola bar. He just smiled and said, "You'll hear them soon." That night I drew first watch again. It was uneventful until I heard something move near the edge of the reeds. I turned slowly, expecting another red light. Instead, I saw Raj standing ankle-deep in the marsh, staring into the water. I got up quietly and approached him. "Raj," I whispered, "what are you doing?" He didn't turn. I wanted to see if they'd show me. The ones beneath. He pointed. "See them?" I followed his finger. The water was dark and still, like oil. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw them. Faces, dozens of them, just beneath the surface, pale, expressionless, and disturbingly human. They weren't floating. They were just there, as if the water was a sheet of glass and they were trapped beneath it. Not corpses, not drowning, just watching. One face looked like Caitlin. Another had Miguel's mouth. Another. It looked like me. I stepped back fast, nearly slipping. Raj didn't move. They're part of it now, not dead, just absorbed. I reached for his arm. "Let's get back to camp." He resisted just for a second, then let me pull him away. Back at camp, he sat down cross-legged, closed his eyes, and whispered something over and over. 12 lights, 12 faces, 12 left. I didn't know what it meant, but I didn't like the sound of counting. The next morning, Tasha found something in Raj's notebook, a sketch. The spiral again, only this time with a body in the center. Thin, arms out, red dots for eyes. The spiral looked like it was pulling inward, like a drain swallowing a person whole. She didn't show it to Raj, didn't need to. He was already drawing another. We hiked that day, mostly to feel like we had some control left. Sarah led, compass useless in her hand. Tasha handled navigation based on sun position and sheer stubbornness. We stopped when we hit another water channel too deep to cross. "Let's fan out and look for a shallow part," Sarah said. I nodded and volunteered for the southern edge. Bad idea. I found the shallow crossing, but the mud gave way halfway through and I sank fast. One step, firm ground. Next step, gone. I dropped like a stone, backpack dragging me down. The water slammed over my head, cold and thick. My boots sank into the muck like they were being pulled. I kicked, thrashed, tried to swim, but the marsh clung to me like wet cement, and then I opened my eyes. They were all around me. The faces, hovering beneath the surface. Eyes open, still, watching, but not blank, focused. One looked like Caitlin. She blinked. Another, Miguel, moved his mouth like he was whispering, but no bubbles rose. I felt something cold wrap around my ankle. Not a plant, not a root, a hand. I panicked, reached into my belt pouch and yanked out a flare. I lit it underwater. It hissed to life, burning red in the murk. The hand recoiled. The faces vanished, gone in a blur of mist and silt. I kicked and broke the surface, gasping. Sarah and Tasha were pulling me out in seconds. Raj watched from the reeds, unmoving. Later, as I sat coughing up brackish water and marsh muck, I realized something. Those faces. They weren't ghosts. They weren't hallucinations. They were witnesses, observers. Like the fog was a medium and they were embedded inside it. Part of it. Learning. Sarah pressed a towel to my face. What did you see? Everyone, I said. I saw everyone. Were they alive? I looked at my hands, still shaking. No, not dead either. Tasha knelt beside me. What were they doing? I met her eyes. Waiting. That night, no one slept. We didn't talk much either. The fog was unusually thick. The air hung heavy. Raj sat cross-legged near the water's edge, drawing again. I asked him, "You're not scared?" He shook his head. They already counted me. I'm not on the list anymore. I didn't ask what list. Somehow I knew I didn't want to know. That night I woke up because something was watching me. No footsteps, no breathing, no sounds at all. Just that primal buzz in your spine that whispers, "Don't open your eyes." Naturally, I opened them. Across from my tent's mesh flap, hovering about 5 feet off the ground, was a red light. Faint, steady, the size of a human eye, maybe smaller. At first, I thought it was just one. Then it tilted, and the second one blinked into view. 2, perfectly spaced, floating, not attached to a body, not casting light, not glowing like LED or bioluminescence, just there, like punctuation marks in the fog. I didn't move. I just stared. The eyes didn't blink, didn't twitch, but slowly, subtly, they tilted sideways, mimicking the angle of my own head. I straightened. So did they. I leaned left. They followed. I'll say this. Mimicry's a lot less cute when it's staring at you like a cat learning how to use a doorknob. I whispered, "Tasha." Nothing. The red eyes hovered closer. 3 feet now. I whispered again, "Tasha, wake up." Still nothing. The fog muffled everything. Like sound wasn't allowed to travel. The red light started to drift, not float. Drift. Smooth, deliberate movement. I grabbed my flare gun, and then suddenly the eyes vanished. No fade, no flicker. Just gone. I stumbled out of the tent and looked around. Nothing but fog and sleep breath. Then I saw Raj, sitting at the edge of camp, staring into the reeds, drawing again. I approached slowly. "You see them too?" He didn't look up. "They're always watching." He held up his notebook, another spiral. But this one was different. At the center were 2 red dots. "They mimic what they study," he whispered. "That's how they learn." I sat beside him. "What are they learning now?" He finally looked at me, and for just a second, I swear, I didn't recognize him. He looked older, sunken, like the marsh had been aging him behind our backs. "They're learning to be us." The next morning I told Sarah and Tasha what I saw. Sarah said nothing. She just stared at the map we'd drawn, no longer resembling any real topography. Tasha nodded slowly. "I saw them too, a few nights ago. I didn't say anything because I wasn't sure if they were outside my tent or inside my head." Sarah finally spoke. "You said they moved with your head?" "Exactly, like they were copying me." Raj walked by then, still sketching. "You know what the scariest part is?" I said. "They didn't try to hurt me. They didn't even get too close." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "That's the scariest part?" I nodded, "because they weren't done yet." That afternoon we found something that changed everything. Raj had gone off to gather water, which should have been a red flag by itself, but we were too exhausted to stop him. He came back with a small, flat stone in his hands. "Found it near the southern clearing," he said. "Thought you'd want to see this." He handed it to me. It had symbols carved into it, rough, shallow, like they'd been scratched hastily with bone or stone. But the strange part? They matched the symbols from the ranger's journal. Spirals, interlocking lines. One symbol that resembled a human figure surrounded by concentric rings. Sarah took a rubbing and compared it to the journal's margin notes. "They match perfectly," she whispered. "Same glyphs, same sequence." Tasha held up the stone. "That means they've been here a long time." "Or," I said, "whoever wrote the journal found one too." Later that night we gathered around a weak fire. Tasha had rigged up one of the still-functioning wildlife cams to display footage on her tablet. The last few hours had captured something new. Around 3:14 a.m., just after the fog pulsed, a figure stepped into frame. It had red eyes, not glowing but present, dim and steady. Its limbs were wrong, too long, fingers that drooped like wet cloth. The body was pale and nearly translucent. The skin shimmered faintly like scales beneath ice. It stood about 20 feet from the camera. Then it tilted its head, exactly the way I had the night before. Sarah leaned in. "It copied you." "It is me," I said before I could stop myself. The shape in the video blinked once. Then it raised its hand, the same way I had, instinctively in the tent. Then it pointed at the camera, and the camera glitched. When it came back on, the figure was gone. But something had been left behind. Just on the edge of the frame, half sunken in the mud, was one of our sample containers. The same kind Caitlin had carried when she disappeared. We retrieved it the next morning. Tasha scanned the barcode. "It's Caitlin's, no question." Inside the container was marsh water and a torn strip of her lab coat. No blood, no damage. Just placed there. Like it was offering us something. A reminder, a message. I looked to the reeds, suddenly aware of every breath I took. We weren't just being followed. We were being watched, studied, and now it wanted us to know. Raj started having dreams. He spoke in his sleep, but not in English. Sometimes he whispered. Other times he chanted. One night I wrote the words down phonetically and showed them to Tasha. She ran a translation tool. No hits, nothing close. Then she paused and said, "Wait, what?" These syllables, they repeat in spirals, layered, like sonar. We both looked at Raj. He was drawing again, same spiral, same figure in the middle. But now around it, 12 red eyes, 6 on each side, and one figure, head bowed, kneeling in the center. When I asked Raj who it was, he smiled faintly. "It's the one who listens." Then he looked up, dead serious. "And one of us already has." When we found the clearing, none of us spoke for almost 5 full minutes, not because we didn't have words, but because there were too many. We were hiking again, following one of Raj's dream directions. Yes, we'd reached that point. The compass spun like a drunk ballerina. The fog thickened in every direction. And Raj, despite looking like he hadn't slept in a week, said, "It's that way." Tasha called it pulling a breadcrumb trail out of a schizophrenic fever dream, but we followed him anyway, and that's when we found it. A perfectly circular clearing, maybe 20 feet across. No reeds, no water, just soft black soil and a faint red glow that seemed to rise from the ground itself. At the center stood a totem. Driftwood, bone, twine. It was lashed together with animal sinew, molded into a vaguely humanoid figure with outstretched arms. Where the face should have been was a large conch shell, bleached white and cracked down the middle. And in the shell's eye sockets, 2 red gemstones, glowing faintly from within. Tasha whispered, "That's not natural." "No," Sarah said. "That's a warning." But Raj? He walked toward it. "Raj!" I shouted, lunging forward and grabbing his arm. He didn't stop, didn't resist, just kept walking until I yanked him back. He blinked like he'd just woken up. "I heard it," he said. "Heard what?" "The song, coming from the shell. It's not music, not words, just direction." Tasha pulled out the journal and flipped frantically. There was something about this, wait. She found it. They mark their sacred place with bone and breath. The shell carries their call. If you hear the song, you've been chosen. I looked at Raj. Chosen for what? He didn't answer. Sarah circled the totem carefully, keeping a respectful distance like it might detonate if she breathed too loud. She took a dozen photos. None of them turned out right. Blurry, warped. One image came back with red eyes behind her in the frame, but we hadn't seen anyone near her at the time. Then Tasha pulled out her audio recorder and pointed it at the totem. "I want to hear what Raj heard." At first, nothing. Then a deep hum, faint like a low heartbeat through a wall, followed by a rhythmic clicking, slow and spaced. We all heard it, even with the recorder off. Sarah's face paled. "That's the same clicking the sat phone plays." Tasha shook her head. "It's not a malfunction, it's a message." Then Raj did something none of us expected. He knelt, right there in the dirt in front of the totem, and began speaking in that unfamiliar language again, quiet, rhythmic like a prayer. Tasha hissed, Get him up now!" Sarah reached out, but before she could touch him, the ground pulsed. Like something exhaled beneath us, the soil rippled. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean it moved, like breath passing beneath a drum. The red glow deepened. Raj's voice changed, lower, raspier, like someone else was speaking through him. Then he stopped. His eyes rolled back and he collapsed face first into the dirt. We dragged him back from the totem. Sarah checked his vitals. He's breathing. Pulse is fast, but steady. He didn't wake up. Tasha aimed the flare gun at the totem. We burn it. Sarah stood. No, if it's sacred to them, destroying it might provoke something worse. Worse than mimicry and red-eyed bog monsters? Tasha snapped. I raised my hand. Let's not start an interdimensional holy war, okay? Let's just get Raj up and get out of here. Tasha lowered the flare gun. Barely. We made camp a few hundred yards from the totem. It wasn't ideal, but Raj was too heavy to carry much farther. I offered to take first watch again. It wasn't altruism. I just didn't want to sleep. Not after what I'd seen in that clearing. The fog was thicker than usual, which I didn't think was physically possible. It coiled around our tents like it was listening. Raj finally stirred around midnight. He sat up slowly, looked around, then in perfect clarity said, They're not evil. We stared. They're just lost, forgotten, rooted. Tasha stepped forward. Raj, what did the totem do to you? He smiled, thin, tired. It helped me listen. To what? To them. We didn't get much sleep after that. I spent the rest of the night flipping through the journal, rereading the passages about the marsh folk. The more I read, the more I felt like the author wasn't warning us to avoid the creatures, but to understand them. Not as monsters, but as remnants. People who once came here, just like us, studied the fog, heard the whispers, saw the lights, and stayed. Forever. The next morning we returned to the clearing. The totem was still there. But the shell was gone, and in its place on the soil below was a fresh spiral, drawn in what looked like blood. At its center, Raj's notebook, open, its latest page blank. Except for a single phrase written in jagged red ink. 1 listens, 3 remain, the eyes are waking. I know what you're thinking. Wait, wasn't Miguel already gone? Yes, he was. Emphasis on was. It started with a sound. We were breaking camp the morning after we found Raj's notebook by the totem. He hadn't spoken since he muttered that line. 1 listens, 3 remain. We weren't sure if he meant himself or someone or something else. Sarah had taken to pacing the edge of the site with the machete drawn, checking the reeds like they owed her money. Tasha was trying to get the sat phone to cooperate, though at this point, she was mostly using it to record fog noises like she planned to sell the world's creepiest ambient album. That's when we heard it. Splash, step, deliberate, slow. Then, guys, a voice. Miguel's voice. We froze. Sarah dropped her pack. Raj looked up for the first time in hours. Tasha's mouth moved, but no sound came out. I said what no one else could. That's not possible. The steps came closer. A figure emerged from the reeds, tall, slouched, familiar. Miguel. He was barefoot, his clothes soaked and torn at the hem. No boots, no pack, just him, standing there with water dripping from his sleeves and something unreadable in his eyes. Hi, he said, as if he'd only just stepped out to use the bathroom. Tasha stepped forward. Miguel? Yeah, he said, smiling faintly. Sorry, got turned around, lost track of time. Sarah didn't move. You vanished 2 days ago. I know, I'm fine. He said it like that should have been the end of the conversation. The first red flag, besides the everything, was how calm he was. The Miguel we knew, jumpy, twitchy, always one nervous laugh away from spilling a beaker of swamp water on his own shoes. This Miguel, still, too still, like his body remembered how to stand but forgot how to fidget. Second red flag, his voice. It was close, really close, but it had a hollow echo to it, like someone doing a Miguel impression in a tunnel. And third, the fog didn't touch him. It parted around him in slow curls, like a cloak he wasn't even aware of wearing. We didn't let him near the tents. Sarah spoke first. "Where have you been?" he shrugged. "Out there, listening." "To what?" His smile deepened. "Everything." Tasha held up her recorder. "What are the marsh folk?" Miguel looked thoughtful. "They're not things, not anymore. They're ideas now, memory, instinct. They're what you become when you stop needing to ask questions." Raj stood and walked slowly toward him. Sarah grabbed his arm. Don't." But Raj shook her off. He stopped just inches from Miguel and said, "You were chosen too." Miguel nodded once. Raj smiled. "I knew it." They talked for 10 minutes in that language, the one from Raj's dreams. No translation, just spirals of sound that made my molars ache. Sarah muttered, "This is insane." Tasha whispered, "This is conversion." And I started realizing something I'd been denying since this began. This place was never a marsh. Not just a marsh, it was a boundary, a membrane, a place where things passed through, left pieces behind, and sometimes forgot what they'd once been. Miguel stayed for the rest of the day. He didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't sit, just stood near the clearing, eyes half-lidded watching the fog. At one point he said, "It's not just the land, the fog is part of them." "Is it alive?" I asked. "No," he said. "It's aware. There's a difference." That night I woke up to a noise, the soft chime of Raj's drawing compass. I unzipped my tent quietly. Tasha was already up, crouched in the dark. "Raj's tent is empty," she whispered. We both looked toward the edge of camp. There, standing at the perimeter, was Miguel, holding his hand out toward Raj, who walked slowly forward, eyes glassy. "Raj," I hissed, but he didn't even blink. Tasha raised the flare gun. Miguel looked at us and smiled. His eyes glowed red, but not light, not fire, reflected red, like something inside him was looking out. Sarah stormed forward, machete raised. "Get back!" Miguel didn't move. Raj did. He turned to us and said, "It's okay. I know what I am now." And then he stepped into the reeds with Miguel. We followed, seconds later. But they were gone. Just fog, just a dry spiral in the mud, and Raj's notebook open to a new page. To listen, to remain. The ritual is almost ready. We burned the notebook. We packed in silence. We hiked without speaking. Even Tasha didn't complain. Not once. But I knew she was thinking the same thing I was. We weren't escaping. We were being herded. That evening we made camp near a collapsed log bridge we didn't remember crossing before. Sarah and I set up the tents while Tasha reviewed her recordings. Then she called me over. "Nate, you need to hear this." She played back an audio file from her recorder, captured during Miguel's return. In the background, under his words, under his calm, measured voice, was a faint hum. Slowed down and filtered, it formed a shape, a pattern of sound, a spiral. I rubbed my face. They're in everything now, the air, the sound, even our voices. Tasha looked me dead in the eyes. "We're next. If I ever hear my own voice screaming from the woods again, I'm just going to lie down and let the fog take me." That night we were down to 3, Sarah, Tasha, and me, and none of us said it out loud, but we were waiting for the next trick, the next vanishing, the next notebook left behind like a calling card from some cosmic puppeteer. Instead, we got something worse. We got me. It started around 2:30 a.m., after we'd rotated watch and Sarah had just gone to lie down. I sat alone near the fire, if you could call it that. The flames barely flickered against the pulsing fog. Tasha had rigged the wildlife cams around the site, but let's be honest, they were more like elaborate ghost GoPros at this point. I was chewing on a piece of beef jerky that tasted like regret when I heard it, A scream, my scream, from the marsh, same tone, same cadence, same breathless edge of panic. Nate, help, they're here. I froze. I didn't even drop the jerky. My mouth just went dry. Then, again, help me! This time even closer. Tasha burst out of her tent. Was that? Sarah stumbled out next, holding the machete. That was Nate. Tasha looked at me. No, that wasn't Nate. And she was right. I was standing right there. We followed the sound, weapons and flashlights ready. The fog was tighter now, pressing in from all sides like we'd stepped into a shrinking box. The scream came again. Help me! I can't. Then it cut off, mid-word, like someone hitting pause on a movie. That's when we saw it. A small, familiar shape on a rock beside the water. A tape recorder. Tasha stepped forward, face pale. Don't touch it yet. She inspected the ground. No footprints, no broken reeds, just placement, precise, displayed. Sarah stood behind her, flashlight sweeping slowly. It's bait again. I looked at the recorder. My voice crackled out of it again, perfectly clear. Nate, help me, they're here. Then the scream again. Then, rewind. Then it played again. We let it loop 5 times before Tasha finally shut it off. Silence. Then Sarah said, It recorded you. Impossible, I muttered. We haven't used that recorder since the first one. Tasha nodded slowly. It didn't just record you, it replicated you. And then, in the quiet that followed, Tasha said something I'll never forget. They've moved beyond mimicry. They're reconstructing. We brought the recorder back to camp and opened it up. Inside, everything looked normal, same model, same tape. But the timestamp? It was dated tomorrow. Later that day, Sarah sat with the journal again. The last few pages were smudged, faded, but one stood out. Once they know you well enough, they can build you. Voice, shape, thought, they can use you, but only after you listen too long. She looked up. It's not just sound, it's exposure, time. The more they observe us, the more they own us. I said, so we're basically on a slow subscription plan to body theft. Exactly. That night, Tasha woke me up. Something's wrong with Sarah. I bolted upright. Sarah was still in her tent, but her lantern was on. She hadn't used it in days. She said the light attracted their interest. We stepped closer, and we heard it. Inside, Sarah was talking, not mumbling, not dreaming, conversing. But she was alone. Tasha motioned for me to wait. She unzipped the tent slowly and peeked in, then went still. I whispered, What is it? She backed out slowly. She's not talking, she's repeating. I looked inside. Sarah sat cross-legged, eyes open but glassy, whispering in that same strange spiraled language Raj had used, only she was saying it in perfect loops over and over, and beside her, another tape recorder. This one wasn't ours. We tried waking her, nothing. I shook her shoulder. She blinked, but didn't stop whispering. Tasha finally clapped a hand over Sarah's mouth. That broke the rhythm. Sarah gasped, blinked again, and screamed. What happened? She cried, backing away. Why were you... Where am I? We showed her the recorder. She went pale. I don't remember that, she whispered. I don't remember any of that. We burned the tape, all of it. We gathered every recorder, every piece of gear with a microphone or lens, and tossed it in the fire. The fog didn't move, didn't react. But somehow, I swear it felt disappointed. Later that night, I took a walk around the edge of camp, just to breathe, to feel like I still could. I reached the clearing by the half-collapsed bridge we'd passed earlier, and saw something floating in the water. I pulled it out with a stick, another tape recorder. This one played a new voice. Sarah's, not from earlier, from right now. It said, Nate, you shouldn't have come out alone. They're here. I turned around. Nothing. I turned back. The recorder was gone. I didn't sleep after that. I sat by the dying fire, clutching the flare gun and watching the reeds like a man waiting for his own ghost to show up. And at sunrise, I saw a figure in the fog, tall, familiar still. It looked like me, same build, same jacket. It didn't move. It just tilted its head and waited. You'd think after seeing your own double in a fog bank, perfect stance, matching jacket, same confused hair, you'd panic. You'd scream. Maybe shoot a flare into its hollow mimic face and run. But I didn't. I just stared. And it stared back, not moving, not blinking. That's what always got me. The stillness. It's like the marsh folk studied us, learned how to stand almost like people, how to breathe almost like people, but missed the tiny things. The fidgets, the shifts. The fact that no real person can hold a pose for that long without twitching, scratching, blinking, breathing hard. But this figure, it could have stood there until the marsh turned to stone. And maybe it did. When I looked away for half a second to call for Tasha, it vanished. Gone. No sound, no footprints, not even a ripple in the fog. I stared at the spot where it had been for a long time, long enough that I started to doubt myself. Maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it wasn't real. Then I noticed something in the reeds nearby, another spiral, dry reeds, twisted flat in a perfect circle, maybe 5 feet across. But this one was different. In the center were claw marks, 4 deep gouges in the mud like someone or something had been dragged or maybe tried to hold on. Tasha found me crouching over it, notebook in hand. She knelt beside me and traced a finger through the gouges. Whatever it was, she said, it didn't go quietly. I nodded. It's escalating. They're not just copying us anymore. They're starting to take initiative. Tasha pulled out the last piece of Raj's drawing we'd saved, burned at the edges but still visible. 12 spirals, 12 eyes, and in the center, one figure kneeling, arms open like surrender. Tasha tapped the drawing. Raj thought we were being sorted. I glanced at the circle. I think we're being culled. Sarah didn't take the news well. She'd been quiet since the night we stopped her chant. Something in her eyes had changed. Less fear, more calculation. She examined the spiral, the marks, even took soil samples. Why bother, I asked. She replied, because data still matters. Even at the end of the world, the variables matter. I wanted to believe that. But all I saw were patterns that meant nothing. And that night, when we sat around what passed for fire, she asked a question that hit me like a dropped stone. Do you think we're the first? The question lingered in the fog. Tasha spoke up. The journal says the marsh folk were once human. That means this has happened before. Sarah nodded. But what if it wasn't just once? What if this place repeats, like a ritual, a process, lures in people, changes them? You're talking about some kind of memory loop. Sarah leaned forward, eyes glassy. Exactly. A natural process like photosynthesis, but with people. That's not natural, I muttered. Not to us, she said, but maybe to them. Later, Tasha and I were checking gear when we noticed Sarah's journal was missing. Not the ranger's journal, the one she'd been keeping herself. We found it near the spiral, open, facing upward. The page was blank until we turned it over and found this. The observer has become the witness. One speaks, one listens, one records, one must remain. Handwriting matched Sarah's. But she swore she never wrote it. That night the fog didn't pulse. It held, still, unmoving, waiting. We sat in silence. No one dared speak. The recorder was gone. All 3 of us checked. None of us had it. And then we heard it. My voice again, but not panicked this time. Not screaming, just speaking, casual, familiar. You can't fight fog, guys. You just breathe it in. You let it learn you. Sarah stood. That's not Nate. Tasha said, it is Nate, just not the one sitting here. I stayed seated. I couldn't move, because I knew what they were hearing. It was the voice I used when I recorded field notes. We followed it to another clearing. At the center was a small recorder, just like before, only this time it was sitting inside a circle of mirrors. 7 shards arranged like petals. Tasha stepped forward and looked down, then gasped. What? I asked. She pointed. Each mirror reflected a different version of me, not in the clothes I wore now, but different ones. One was older. One was smiling when I wasn't. One was soaked to the skin, and one wasn't blinking. Sarah picked up the recorder. She didn't press play. She just listened. Then she looked at me. You have been speaking in your sleep. No, I said. Tasha's voice was tight. You sure? I hesitated. I don't think so. Sarah handed me the recorder. Then explain this. She pressed play, and I heard my own voice again. And then I saw them, faces under the water, watching me, like I'd always been here, like I never left. It wasn't from my notebook, it wasn't a recording I remembered, but it was me, softer, slower, older, and worse. It sounded tired, like I'd given up. We destroyed the mirrors, threw the recorder into the fire, but it didn't burn, just hissed. Tasha finally kicked it into the marsh. It sank with a splash, and that was the last time any of us said my name out loud, because I started wondering, if the fog had recorded Raj and Miguel and Sarah and me, then which version of us was still here, and who exactly was listening? We weren't planning on going back to the ranger shack. If anything, we'd written it off as a haunted treehouse built by someone with a death wish and access to too many warning signs. But we were out of ideas, out of food, and, after the mirrors, out of nerve. Tasha said, "We need to retrace our path. If there's any signal, it's going to be from high ground." Sarah agreed, but not because of logic. She just kept muttering, "Back to the beginning, back to where they first touched us." It sounded like she was quoting something, or someone. The fog was lighter that morning, not gone, but thin enough that we could see our shadows again, just barely. Tasha called it being gifted visibility by the gods of mild inconvenience. We moved fast. Sarah led, machete in hand. I followed with the flare gun. Tasha brought the last wildlife cam, just in case we needed to record our doom for posterity. Funny how gallows humor started sounding like regular conversation. We found the shack after 2 hours, exactly where we left it. Same broken steps, same half-collapsed walls. But something was different. "Where's the journal?" Sarah asked. We froze. She was right. The journal we'd stashed, the journal from the first ranger, the one with all the warnings, was gone. "Maybe an animal dragged it off," I said. "Animals don't read," Tasha replied. I stepped inside slowly. The air inside was stale, still. No bugs, no rot, just quiet. Too quiet. And on the back wall, new writing, carved deep into the wood, 3 left, 2 watching. 1 must stay. Sarah turned pale. Tasha stepped back. I read it again, out loud, 3 left, 2 watching, 1 must stay. Then Tasha whispered, "It's not talking about us. It's talking to us." Sarah was already flipping through her personal journal. She stopped on a page, one that was blank just yesterday. Now it read, "We see you seeing. That is enough." There was movement outside the shack, a flutter. We all turned to the open door. A figure stood at the tree line, barely visible, arms long, swaying, thin, no face. Red eyes glowing, just watching, not coming closer, not afraid. Just there. Sarah whispered, "It's waiting." I raised the flare gun, even though we all knew it wouldn't do anything. Tasha said, "No, let's try something else." She walked to the shack's edge, pulled out the wildlife cam, and held it up toward the creature. "Come on," she muttered. "Smile for science." It tilted its head, just like before. But this time, it took a step forward. The air around us changed, dense, hot, like walking into a greenhouse filled with breath. More figures emerged from the fog, 6, maybe 7, all red-eyed, some tall, some hunched, none fully human, all watching. Tasha kept recording. Sarah whispered, "We're in the ritual now." I said, "What ritual?" She didn't answer, because that's when the shack creaked, from above, from inside. We looked up and saw it. A figure crouched in the rafters, too thin, too bent. Its arms clung to the beams like a spider. Its head twisted slowly down, red eyes blinking once, twice. It dropped down between us, no sound. Just sudden silent weight. We froze. It didn't attack. It stood, lifted one long hand, and placed the ranger's journal on the table. Tasha gasped. "What the—" The creature turned and walked out, disappearing into the fog. We stood there, shaking, breathing like we'd just run a marathon underwater. Sarah grabbed the journal. The last page was new. "You've seen enough, but one of you must stay to finish the record, to speak what cannot be heard, to remember what cannot be written." And beneath that, 3 names, mine, Sarah's, Tasha's, 1 circled. Mine. I laughed. I actually laughed. Too hard. Great, I said. Of course it's me, should have known. The narrator always gets left behind. Tasha shook her head. No, we're not doing this, we're all getting out. Sarah stared at the names. It's not asking, it's telling. But what if we don't follow the rule, I asked. The last time we broke a rule, she said. Caitlin screamed for days. We argued. For an hour. Tasha said she'd stay instead. I said I'd never forgive her. Sarah offered herself. I told her she was the only one who still had any sense of direction. Eventually I stopped talking because I already knew it was always going to be me, the one who watched, the one who took notes, the one who recorded everything. That night we made a fire inside the shack, barricaded the door. Sarah wrote down what she remembered. Tasha charged every device we had left, including my headlamp and backup battery. And I gave them my notebook, the original, the one I started on day 1. Tasha handed me the flare gun. Just in case, I nodded, but we all knew it was ceremonial at this point. At sunrise, they left. They didn't say goodbye. I didn't want them to, because if they looked back, they might hear me calling for help. Now it's just me, the shack, the fog, and the watchers. Red eyes blink outside my window sometimes. But they don't come in. Not yet, because I'm still writing, and they're still listening. The night after Sarah and Tasha left was the quietest I'd ever heard the marsh. No shifting reeds, no growling from the distance, no footsteps pretending to be mine. Just silence. Even the fog stopped pulsing. It simply hung there like a wet curtain, still and cold and impossibly heavy. They hadn't come for me yet, but I knew they would. I sat inside the shack for hours, writing by headlamp. I wrote everything, every sound, every face, every red light, every rule, every time we broke them, every time we didn't. I hoped it mattered. That's the worst part, I think. Not the fear, not the imitation, not even the voice they keep replaying that sounds just like me, but older, slower, already surrendered. The worst part is the doubt. What if this whole thing wasn't about terror? What if it was about documentation? What if the marsh folk weren't monsters? What if they were archivists? I got my answer around midnight. I woke with my journal still in my lap and the lantern long since burned out. Outside the shack, dozens of red eyes had appeared. Close now, closer than ever, no longer drifting, no longer teasing. They had come to gather. I opened the door and stepped onto the creaking wood platform. I expected fear. What I felt instead was resignation, not defeat. More like recognition. This was the trade. One stayed. One remembered. They were everywhere. Figures standing just beyond the tree line, half shrouded in fog. Tall, gaunt, draped in wet moss and vines. Faces featureless but for the red glow hovering where eyes should have been. And in the very center of the clearing, the totem. It had returned. Only now it was taller, more complete. Its limbs had grown, extended with new bones, new wood. Its shell was back in place, sealed with sinew. The eyes in the shell blinked, red, then blue, then red again. And it spoke, not aloud, not with sound, but with memory. My own. The faces in the fog shifted. They all began tilting their heads, slowly, perfectly, matching the motion I made when I first saw them mimic me. Then from the shadows, Sarah's voice, Tasha's laugh, Caitlin's scream, Miguel's soft-spoken explanations, Raj's whispers, all layered, all coming from mouths that weren't theirs. My name echoed through it all. Nate, Nate, Nate. But not as a warning, as a command. The spiral began to form around me. I could feel it, reeds shifting, feet pressing into the mud, invisible paths coiling inward like a drain pulling memory down a funnel. The fog rose with it, thickening in time with the rhythm, and at the center of it all, the shell on the totem began to glow, a red pulse, one beat, then two, then stillness. I stepped forward, not because I wanted to, because I knew I had to. There are moments in life when you don't make decisions. You simply accept the ones that were already made for you. The shack was never a prison. It was a pulpit, a place from which someone would speak, someone would remember. And now I understood. They don't need us to live here. They need us to tell it. I reached the totem. The red eyes blinked slowly, and the shell opened, not with a creak, but with silence. Inside, my journal, not the one I'd written in, A copy, exact, identical. Leather cover, frayed edges, pen marks, even the stupid little coffee stain from the day I dropped it on the boat. But on the last page, in handwriting that wasn't mine, "Your record is complete. The cycle may end. One returns, one remains." I looked up and saw Sarah, standing just outside the spiral, her face stunned, dirty, alive. Behind her, Tasha, wide-eyed, breathing hard, holding a flare gun. They'd come back. But why? Sarah stepped forward. "We couldn't leave you. We got 10 miles before the fog pushed back. Every trail we followed led right back to the shack." Tasha added, "And then we heard it, your voice, screaming, laughing, talking to us." I looked around. The figures hadn't moved. They just watched. Then the red lights began to fade, one by one. I picked up the journal from the shell, held it in both hands. I said softly, "They're done." Tasha whispered, "So, that's it?" Sarah looked around. "Why aren't they stopping us now?" The fog thinned slightly, just enough to reveal a new path, narrow, clear, leading out of the spiral. We didn't ask questions. We walked, 3 of us, no tricks, no whispers, just fog, still watching but no longer pulsing. We followed the trail for hours, until we saw it, a road, cracked asphalt. An old metal sign nearly swallowed by vines. It read, "Marrow Marsh, closed to public, by order of the Department of Wildlife and Land Management." We stumbled onto the road like survivors of a shipwreck. We didn't speak, we didn't need to. Tasha finally pulled out her phone. Signal, 1 bar. She burst into laughter, then sobs. Sarah sat down on the shoulder of the road and stared at the fog. Still hanging there, but not following, just lingering. And me? I opened the journal. The last page had changed again. "You told the story, you listened, you remembered. You may go." But the eyes remain. We didn't talk much after that. How could we? What do you say after walking out of something that shouldn't have let you go? The fog didn't chase us. The eyes didn't follow. They simply watched, until we were far enough down the road that the trees closed behind us like a curtain, and it was as if Marrow Marsh had never existed. Except we still carried it with us, in our dreams, in the way we flinched at red taillights, in the silence between conversations, when our minds wandered and remembered just how close they'd come. They airlifted us out 2 days later. A ranger found us limping along a service trail, muddy and exhausted. Said the marsh was off limits, never open to researchers, that it hadn't been touched in years, no permits, no records. He looked at us like we were hallucinating half the words we said. To be fair, we probably were. Back at the field hospital, Sarah handed off her samples, only for the bio team to report that none of them matched any known species. In fact, half the jars had evaporated completely. The labels melted to unreadable curls. Tasha uploaded every recording, gone, not corrupted, erased. Even the hard drives were blank. Like we'd brought back the shape of a story, but not the sound. And me? I kept the journal, not mine, the other one, the one they gave me. I tried reading from it once at a university conference. Got 5 sentences in before the mic blew out and the lights in the auditorium flickered like we were hosting a seance. Never tried again. I stopped teaching a year later, moved to a cabin near the coast. Quiet, solitary, foggy, but not that fog. I still see them sometimes, reflections in the window that don't move like I do, dreams where my voice says things I've never said. Once, I saw Sarah on the news. She's consulting on wildlife projects in Alaska now, still sharp, still distant. There was a flicker in her smile I hadn't seen since the marsh. I think she remembers more than she lets on. Tasha emailed me once, subject line, "They don't forget." No body text, just a photo of her front porch, a single red marble resting on the doormat. But here's the thing that really keeps me up at night. Not the fog, not the mimicry, not even the idea that I might have been replaced. No, it's the journal. It keeps changing. Every month or so, I open it and find a new page I don't remember writing. Pages about things I haven't experienced yet. Like someone's feeding a script into me or through me. The last page I read, it didn't end with my name, it ended with someone else's. A name I didn't recognize. and under that name was a phrase. One watched, one wrote. Now one will listen, and below that, a spiral, drawn in fresh ink, still wet. I don't know if you believe any of this. Honestly, I don't care. Because the truth isn't for you. It's for them, the marsh folk, the ones who watched, the ones who waited, the ones who recorded. They didn't need us for our bodies. They needed us for our stories, for our memories, for our patterns. And now they have them. So if you're reading this, if you found this tucked away in a ranger station, or logged in some dusty archive, or uploaded anonymously to a forgotten corner of the internet, I have just one thing to say. Don't go looking. Don't chase the fog. And if you ever hear a voice in the marsh that sounds like your own, don't answer it. Because not everyone who walks into the spiral gets to walk back out. I'm Dr. Midnight. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you next time.